Prayer is useless. And if you think you're a super special person, that your God readjusts his perfect plan so you can get that promotion at work while 107 people, including 37 children, died in what some call an act of God, then we want to hear from you, because the show starts now. What's up, heathens? Welcome, everybody. Today is July 20th, 2025, and I am your host, Godless Engineer, John Gleason. And joining me today is Dr. Blitz. How you doing there, Dr. Blitz?
I am warm and uncomfortable, but otherwise great.
Yes, I too am warm and uncomfortable. Heat rises, and I'm on the half story of my house, and so like it's pretty hot up here right now. But I'm glad that you're doing well, other than being a little hot over there. So do you want to in case anybody doesn't know you, do you want to tell people kind of who you are and everything like that?
Yeah, so I'm a human that was born somewhere on Earth around 32 years ago. I eventually ended up getting a PhD in physics, and now, as part of my science communication efforts, I engage in debate lord memery. So here we are. I've never been a Christian. I've never really believed in God to begin with, but I still have strong opinions.
Yep. I also similarly have strong opinions, and I also cannot say similarly in like a normal way. All right. Well, we do have our first caller lined up. Are you ready to just jump right on in?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Before we get to our first caller, I do want to specify that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So with that in mind, we are going to talk to Benji from my own state of Aloysius Llamas. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Hey there, Benji. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. I don't think I've ever spoke to y'all before. So I was going to go ahead and talk about the how God's patience is gone, pretty much, and also the indoctrination thing. But I'm pretty sure y'all would just agree with me on that.
Well, yeah. So the notes say that you're saying that indoctrination is bad at all levels. I'm kind of curious what you mean at all levels, like what that might specify. But if you want to talk about how God's patience is run up, we could start there.
Well, I guess I could do both. So the indoctrination thing, like everything from churches cherry picking what they want to teach, because families go to church, and the ones that are religious. You're from Alabama, so you understand this. I go to church. I've been to several different denominations throughout the decades. I'm pretty old. I even speak Latin, and so I talk about the Bible to people. I teach them about the books that they banned or burned, got rid of, whatever. A lot of people don't count them as canon, but then I explain that if you throw out half a story, you can't say the other half is all there is. You can't look at half a picture and say it's the whole thing. And so the indoctrination problems, one of the things I have a problem with is them cherry picking and doing special pleading and, all those fallacies and crap that they tend to do. I do go to church. I am considered a theist because I believe in God, but I'm a Gnostic. And there's not really any Gnostics left, to be honest. I'm also a spiritualist, which I didn't realize that's what that was, but basically believing in limbo, spirits, that kind of thing. So.
Okay, Benji, could you explain what you mean by Gnostic? Because that can mean a couple of different things. What do you mean by Gnostic?
Yeah, so God is both. Yeah, God's both good and evil. the Trinity was added in the 1500s by the Roman Catholic Church, right? Well, probably a little earlier than that. After the 1500s was Dark Ages. The Catholic Church made up the Trinity. It was not part of the original Gospels. They added that in later. And earlier, when I was talking to people, I explained that God and Jesus cannot be the same person because God is wrathful and a jealous God, and that's actually when they say God's name is jealous, the actual text to that was God's name is the jealous one because God is jealous. That's why the first thing he says is, "Don't believe in any other gods but me." But then I try to teach people stuff about the actual Bible, the history of it, and all that stuff, and people get mad because they want.
Benji, so look, it may very well be the case that you don't believe in traditional Christian doctrine like the Trinity or like the the unity of Jesus and the Father and so on. You may very well not believe in any of that, but you do still believe in God. And so I guess the real question is why?
Just knowledge that was given to me, life experiences, that kind of thing. Also, I read.
Hold on, Benji. Sorry. What knowledge was given to you?
Well, just history and just different stuff. I mean, Book of Enoch, Book of Mary, Book of Paul. A lot of the hidden Gospels, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was the Old Testament. Right. Gilgamesh, just a lot.
So Benji, I'm just kind of curious, like the first few books that you mentioned there, as far as like Christian books go and stuff. Those come much later, like in history. I do want to correct one thing. The Trinity wasn't added at one particular point. It developed over a long period of time, but the first time that it was formally defined was in the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD.
Right. There was a group of people that decided what to keep and what to throw out. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
The leaders of the Catholic Church.
Well, right, but what I'm saying is that the books that you mentioned at the very beginning of your list of books that contain the knowledge that you're talking about, those are known like fabrications that occurred much later after the fact. Like those things don't represent actual history or any kind of actual knowledge that we know of. Those are just fabrications written by people meant to push some kind of theological narrative about it. So I guess I'm going to go back to asking you, like, what knowledge was given to you and how did you receive that knowledge? Did you just read these books, or did God like directly talk to you and tell you that these books are valid and relate something? How did you get it, and how do you know that it's accurate?
I mean, it kind of just flooded my head, my mind. So, I mean, in a sense, God gave me the knowledge, but also just to point out one thing, technically I could say that the Bible is a copy or a fabrication of a copy, because the flood story was passed on eons before the Bible was ever even written. Before Genesis, you had the Epic of Gilgamesh, and before that you had stories in Samaria and the sorry, my dog's still barking. Sumerian text, Anaki text, and a bunch of other ones.
So, Benji, you're giving us a great reason.
It's a polytheist. There was not monotheist.
Benji, you're giving us a great reason to be skeptical of all of the religious texts, right? I mean, if it's the case that these religious texts are not describing something that actually happened, but are rather stealing stories from something earlier, why should we trust any of it? I mean, like, perhaps you might say that we could trust the earliest case of these, but still, these are better understood as mythology, as folklore. What's the reason for believing these texts represent what's true about the world?
Well, I mean, a lot of mythology was based on true events, but they were, later blown out of proportion.
How do you know that?
I have a strong person that was the son of somebody that lived on a mountain, Hera, which Hercules is not Heracles, meant son of Hera, and then it was translated to Hercules, and then you have the Trail Laborers and all of that other stuff. And then also, I don't know if people realize this either, but it wasn't three wise men in the beginning that went to see Jesus. There was way more than that. And actually, it doesn't directly give a number either, I don't believe.
No, I mean, so the gospel stories are pretty specific about who comes and sees it, and I mean, I do agree that only one of the stories has wise men coming, and then in another story it's shepherds. So I mean, there is a difference there. But as far as what you're talking about, where are you deriving that information from? Are you deriving it from later documents?
Some of it was tablets that they chiseled on at the time that was recovered. Other stuff was papaya, and then other stuff was stuff that they found later.
What tablets?
Of all tree.
And papaya is a fruit.
I don't know what the hell papaya is, but that's.
You're thinking of papyrus.
Well, I'm talking about the papyrus paper that they used to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, but I'm kind of curious as to what tablets are being chiseled on that's recording this information. As my recollection is that there's many papyrus pieces, like there's a lot of manuscripts written on papyrus that we have fragments of, but I can't think of any tablets that record these things. What tablets are you talking about?
Well, I mean, there was houses that they made out of basically clay, stone and clay, and during that time, and they essentially they lived in kind of like caves, but it was more like a square house that they built out of brick and limestone and
so not caves, houses made out of brick.
They record stuff on the walls well, that's what I mean. But they would record stuff on the walls similar to what Egyptians did, with the hieroglyphics and all of that stuff.
Right. Okay. I get that, but you're not telling me, like, typically these tablets, they have names associated with them so that people can identify which tablet you're talking about here. Okay, like do you have any other information that could help us like verify this? Because, and I know I'm asking a question and then elaborating, but just to let you know, it's coming off to us as if you're just ad hoc stating that these things have been found and that they verify these things and that they are in fact trustworthy. But what we're trying to do is actually assess the information so that we can know whether or not it actually is trustworthy information, which I'm guessing it's not. So again, I'm going to ask, what specific like tablets or what specific carvings are you talking about?
There was, I forget the exact number, but there was a whole lot of tablets that they did during that time that had the Hebrewic laws on them. You have the Ten Commandments, but you also had a bunch more that had social laws, legality laws, government, a bunch of other things. At the same time. And so a lot of those are, I believe, still around, I think.
So I'll help you out here. So probably the earliest record that there is of any of the things that you were referring to is probably the Epic of Gilgamesh. There is a stone tablet, I suppose it was a clay tablet, that has parts of the Epic of Gilgamesh inscribed on it in Akkadian, and that dates back 4,000 years or perhaps 3,500 years or something like that. That certainly exists. But sure, we can say that the story existed. How do we know that the event actually happened?
Well, I mean, you would have to basically, right now there's not really a way to look at find a way to see all the events that took place in a particular point in time. So you have to just go off what was recorded at the time. And you're right, by the way, it was clay, not stone. But the Epic of Gilgamesh was actually written before Genesis, which they got a lot of stuff in Genesis wrong. I know a lot of Christians disagree. But that's why science and religion can never be compatible, and it was never compatible back then either. But
so Benji, right? Well, so Benji, right? Benji, pivoting off of that point, you say that religion and science are mutually exclusive, or they're toxic towards one another, or they can't merge or whatever. So with you being religious, does that mean that you reject like a lot of scientific discoveries or a lot of scientific theories? Like is that a reasonable assumption?
Well, no. I mean, you can be scientific and still believe, but the way that people do that is they associate discoveries with God. So, for example, black holes or new stars or whatever. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's a damn dome over the earth. I mean, like the firmament. I mean, I'm not going to go that far with it, or sit here and be a new age creationist and be like, oh, well, the earth is only 4,000. No, that's just stupid. But what I would do is I would say, well, everything that is created or everything that does exist or has existed was created by God. I mean, that's what most people say. So therefore, anything that's discovered in the future, any technology that we come up with in the future is allowed by God. And so that way he still gets all the credit. I don't like the fact that people blame Lucifer for the bad stuff, because really he's just a scapegoat. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, there's ways to get around the science and religion don't agree. You just have to be creative about it. Now, back in the day,
is that really Benji? Is that really truthful though? Like, Benji, I'm sorry. Hold on. Is that really truthful though? Like, if you have to be creative in order to work a scientifically minded worldview, into your view of the world, is that really all that truthful as far as like, you retaining your religious sort of, like, I guess my question is, how truthful is it to be creative to work science into your religious worldview?
Well, it's not like I'm painting the target around the arrow, if that's what you mean. I mean,
it kind of seems like you are
trying to include everything together instead of separating it. Well,
no, I disagree with your statement about that you're not painting the target around your arrow, because you've already shot your arrow and you said, well, this is where God is, and then you're drawing whatever, I guess, science around it, or however that analogy would work. You're definitely like cherry picking here, and I just don't see that as a very truthful, thing to do, or a good thing to do.
Well, no, I mean, I know the whole Bible like the back of my hand. I'm not cherry picking the Bible at all. I know the entire Bible. I know it like the back of my. I've read it hundreds of times. I know it like the back of my hand. But I would say,
no, I understand that. What I'm saying is that you're cherry picking science. Because I feel like if you adhere to a scientific worldview, you're gonna come. And I don't know, maybe Blitz would disagree with me on this, but I feel like if you're gonna adhere to a scientific worldview, at some point you've got to wrestle with that cognitive dissonance of working with a religious worldview, because the religious worldview, as you yourself stated, it can't be all that well merged with a scientific worldview. So it just seems like at some point you have to be dishonest with yourself.
Well, it can. Well, no, it can. I mean, angels and everything are in a different realm. You can explain that by multiverse or different frequencies.
Oh, no. Don't do this to me.
The photons and stuff that work into existence and pop in and out of existence. I mean, there's different ways to work around that. Also,
do you recognize that as ad hoc, though? But Benji, do you recognize that as being ad hoc? Like you're just stating God. Like from what I've heard from you so far, Benji, is that you're ad hoc stating that God is responsible for all these things instead of actually providing any kind of real evidence to ground your statements in your conclusion that God is responsible. You're just saying that God is responsible.
Do you want me to form a sound argument here to try to prove the point? I mean,
that would be lovely.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and go to the scientific method, but I mean, I could go ahead in 5 seconds and form a sound argument. I mean,
please.
So if everything that does exist and will exist exists in either natural or supernatural causes, then either God made it or he didn't make it. And then if God did make it, then he's responsible. If he didn't make it, something else would have to be responsible, because for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction to everything that's in motion. So all the stars, everything that's in motion, space and time and everything else, you could argue it started with the Big Bang, but there's other stuff that was before the Big Bang. There was energy. There was a state of mass that was close to equal to zero, to absolute zero, but it wasn't absolute zero. And some scientists, and not all of them, but some.
I'm gonna cry.
Infinite regression. So
look. So Benji,
you're going to die with the heat theory, which is everything's
Benji.
Right, sorry, Benji, you're muted right now while Blitz addresses all of the wrong that you just said.
So yeah, I mean, this is like my 9/11, right? The argument that you were making, that you were trying to make, is that everything that exists has either a supernatural or a natural cause. If it has a supernatural cause, then God created it, and hence God exists. If it has a natural cause, then that natural cause must therefore also have its own cause, and so on. And so it seems like you're saying that unless there is some sort of infinite regress, then God must exist. And even if we grant that argument as valid, which it perhaps is valid, I don't know if it's sound, you can't get away from an infinite regress. But even beyond then, there are models of the universe that have a beginning without any cause that started the beginning. It gets a little bit complicated, but there are ways to make sense of this from a scientific point of view. The whole notion of cause and effect is a 2,500-ish year old piece of metaphysics that we just haven't really used to do science for the last 150 years or so. We use equations now. We use what are called evolution equations, which are a type of differential equation. We just don't talk about causes and effects when we're really doing science properly.
All right, Benji, Brett, you're back.
Okay, so if you're talking about scientific equations, I know. If you're talking about the scientific, if you're talking about the scientific equations, like the formula equations and all of that stuff with the yield sign and everything, I'm still, I mean, I could use the yield sign stuff too. I'm pretty good at that too, and scientific method, or scientific methods, depending on which one I'm doing. But also, I still do the cause and effect thing. Everything must have a cause, otherwise it wouldn't be in motion or it wouldn't do what it's doing. And so the whole thing, one of the roots of science is discovery. And if you're not trying to discover everything and anything that is out there in the universe, then you're not going to know it because you're not trying to find the answers to it. So I do disagree with you. You did get the argument, by the way. You got the argument pretty good that I was trying to make. As far as infinite regression, there could be infinite regression, but there is no way to prove it yet. But if there is infinite regression, then that just means that there's always been something. Whether that something is a god or not would still be debatable. But there could be something else before the Big Bang that has always existed.
The typical definition of a god.
Trying to discover stuff or not.
So the typical definition of a god is some sort of mind that created the universe, and perhaps that has additional qualities like it's all powerful, all good. But just the bare bones definition is a mind that created the universe. And if the claim is that if you have an infinite regress, then it could still be God. Well, I guess maybe. But the point is the argument that you gave does not soundly and validly demonstrate the existence of a God. At best, it demonstrates a dichotomy that you either have an infinite regress or you don't. And at worst, it's not even valid. So all I would say is that these sort of like prime mover type arguments, they kind of fail when we begin to consider the way that things actually are in our universe, right? I mean, like this notion of what even is cause in a timeless universe. Well, that's a very, very hard question to answer. I don't think that your argument is capable of dealing with that.
Well, I have an answer for that. I have an answer for that. Time didn't exist in the beginning of the universe. In fact, time didn't exist 2,000 years ago because technically time started being measured. Well, whenever they started measuring the units of time is when the concept of time actually started. Now, you could also argue that, time is coexistent with space and all that crap. But to me, when they started measuring time is when it actually became a thing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did you just shit on Einstein's like theory of general relativity and special relativity? Did you just shit on all of that by saying all that crap? I'm just asking for a friend.
Well, Einstein was wrong on some of that, right?
On the relativity stuff, probably
Einstein
not.
Was wrong on some of that. There is ways to go faster than light. And
how could
it was already proven.
No, Benji, we need to stop right now. I need you to explain to me how to go faster than light. I would love to know. I would love to hear this TED Talk.
To go faster than light, you would have to break the light barrier, speed of light equation. MC squared, basically, E equals MC squared. And to do that, you would have to use a lot of energy. And to do that, you would have to use basically either like nuclear fusion power or even like hyperdrives using protons and neutrons and infinite energy to travel through space. But then you get and there's a problem with that because if you're able to travel at light speed,
they hit the third tower.
Get so far away from the Earth, you can't go back to the Earth because everything's moving away from you.
So Benji,
there's a point at which you go.
Benji, this is like, Benji, are you like trained in any particular field?
Away.
Sorry. Are you trained? Are you like trained in any field? Like, did you go to school for something, or did you get training in anything?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what it was?
Food science. Why? Yeah.
For a comparison.
Well, let's see. I did. So I did. What is that? Temple. Like the study of atoms and energy and energy fluctuation and the energy manipulation, that kind of thing. And then I also did
physics.
And
you have a degree in physics? You were trained in physics?
The time dilation. Time dilation.
So Benji, can I ask you just a really
using
can I ask you
matter?
Benji, can I ask you a really, really basic question? Could you explain to me what a tensor is?
The tensor is what you said?
No, tensor. Tensor.
Okay. Tensor. That's it's been a while. But I believe that's a unit of measurement or it's a type of particle. But by the way,
it's neither of them.
The thing that I was going to say, the universe is working like a jet particle. So it's repeating itself over and over. So once it either would expand infinitely and we would die in the cold, or it would condense and then we would die from heat. It would go back into an infinite point of mass, Big Bang, and then it would do it again and repeat itself. And so it would have no beginning and it would have no end, and it would act as a density.
That's the Big Crunch model, right? Am I mistaken?
But anyway, that was what I was.
That's one variant. So Benji, here's what I would suggest as somebody whose field you are currently like taking an enormous dump on. Please don't. There are plenty of people who know a lot of physics. It doesn't seem like you're one of them. Rather than watching pop science YouTube videos or watching TikTok videos, I would suggest pick up like Peskin and Schroeder, pick up a Griffiths textbook, pick up Sean Carroll's Space-Time and Geometry if you want to learn about relativity. You could even pick up, a more advanced book like Wald, or you could pick up some, you could pick up Sakurai if you want to do more quantum stuff. There are a lot of books, but it seems like none of the things you were saying had anything to do with any of those things that are said in the books. So please, I guess, refrain from saying things about physics. It would make me feel a lot better.
Okay, Benji, we do need.
I can tell you why.
But Benji, we do need to move on to other callers, but we do have calls stacking up. So I'm gonna allow you to have the last word here. That might be a bad idea, but I'm gonna let you have the last word, and then we do need to move on. Okay.
Yeah, you can use gravity and mass to bend space-time and create a time temporal wormhole to travel through time. So I do actually know a lot about physics. And they actually did design hyperdrives for the past 20 or 30 years now. One of them.
Okay, I did not mute him. He just went.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, bye, Benji. I'm just gonna go ahead and drop you because that was. I should not allow them to have the last say. I feel like that was pretty good proof of that. So. I do have a few announcements just really quick for everybody before we get into our next theist caller. First up is the Back Cruise 2025 is coming up fast, August 16th at 7 p.m. Tickets.
Hey folks, Jimmy here
quickly.
From the Atheist community of Austin.
So get yours today and join people like James S., Kara G., Helen G., who already have their tickets. If you're not able to attend, you can still help out by donating underneath the live chat to purchase a ticket for one of our hosts or crew. So you can visit tiny.cc/backcruise to get your tickets, and we'll see you on the boat. You can also get your AXP merch at tiny.cc/merch ACA. We've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, pint glasses, which I need to get me one of those. I'm actually wearing an AXP shirt right now. Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice material. So definitely get you some of that. And before we get to the next caller, I just want to give a big shout out to the crew who put the show together every single week. Video operators, audio operators, note takers, call screeners, chat moderators, everybody. Thank you guys so much for putting forth all the hard work to make these shows awesome. All right. Now we're done with announcements for right now. So Blitz, if you're ready, I'm ready to jump into the next one.
Yeah, sure. Hopefully, I can't imagine it goes worse than that.
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to see. But next,
how many towers can they hit?
Gohan is next. Hey there, Gohan. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing pretty good. So, what you want to talk about there, Gohan?
Good. So I want to talk about why I view the claims of Christianity are different compared to claims of another religion, and then why I trust, and like those differences are the reasons why I trust Christianity.
Okay. To preface this, though, what I would ask is that we sort of go at it one at a time instead of like just, shotgunning an entire list at us. Maybe we could just go one at a time, like talking, 1 point at a time.
Would it be okay if I give the list of reasons and then we go 1 point at a time?
how long is your list? Because if it's like 10 points, then we're not going to be able to get all of them, and I'd rather not leave anything on the floor. But if it's like a short list, then sure.
Yeah, I'd say somewhere like between 4 and 6. I actually haven't like counted it myself, but somewhere.
Why not start with what you would say is the
ideas.
best reason?
I would say if I'm not really sure there is a best thing. I'll just get into it really quick if that's okay with you guys. The claims of Christianity was made by people who could not have been mistaken. So they could either be lying or they could be right, but they couldn't have been mistaken. So that's one point. Another point is that appearances happen in group, so there's no room for like hallucination or anything like that. And then the third thing is that these are heartfelt claims. These people ended up going to their deaths for their beliefs. So I would say those three things are things no other religion really has together.
So, have you ever heard of the Gospel of Ephraimius?
Not.
Yeah, so the Gospel of Ephraimius is a document that documents the natural conspiratorial explanation for the entirety of all of the appearances that have been all of the appearances that happened post Jesus's death. It accounts for all of the miracles that happened during Jesus's life, and explains them all in a purely naturalistic and perhaps plausible way. Neither of which rely on people lying, but it does rely on people being mistaken, which of course people can be mistaken. So, for example, it's quite plausible that trickery was used to create apparent miracles, right? It's quite plausible that these early people who witnessed the risen Jesus or claimed to have witnessed the risen Jesus could have been tricked by an imposter, right? So it seems like that, at least given that we know that those things are possible, that we should give that view that this was all an enormous conspiracy conducted by the Romans far higher credence than any sort of supernatural view.
So as far as like the imposter claim, like, yes, it is possible, but it's something I severely doubt, and most New Testament scholars, atheists and Christian alike, severely doubt that as well. These many of their claims are true claims that they sat and ate with Jesus for an extended period. If they sat and ate with Jesus for an extended period of time, there's no way it could have been somebody other than Jesus.
Why not?
Well,
like, these are men that spent 3 years of their lives following this guy. They would know if somebody else came.
Oh, that totally depends on which gospel you're reading there. So already there's a problem right there, is that it depends on which gospel you read. Sure, if you're reading John and you're taking John at his word, then there's like a 3-year ministry. But if you're reading the synoptic gospels, then there's not a 3-year ministry. So are you saying that John is the correct gospel, or is Matthew, Luke, and Mark, are any of those the correct gospel? Which gospel is the correct one?
So I'm just saying these are the claims of Christianity. Like, whether the Gospels are trustworthy is a separate thing, but this is just assuming like
the claims of Christianity are the Gospels.
The claims.
Like the Gospels are a key thing to the claims. Like you just said that, like, for instance, you just said that these people ate with Jesus, and there's no way that an imposter could be there, being an imposter of Jesus. But there's actually no record outside the Gospels of anybody eating with Jesus, or even talking to Jesus. It's all of the records that we have are post-resurrection interaction with Jesus.
So maybe I should have started with a preface. This whole idea is assuming like the claims of Christianity are authentic versus the claims of Islam is authentic claims versus the claims for Buddhism are authentic claims. Like if you take all their claims, give as much credibility to each claim as possible, and then weigh them against each other. Christianity is only one.
So basically, I feel like what your method here is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the method that you just laid out was, well, if we assume that Christianity is truthful in its claims about what happened, then Christianity is the most truthful religion, or Christianity can be trusted more so than any other one. So I mean, I feel like that's pretty circular, because you're starting out saying, well, Christianity is true, and then you're arguing your way to say, oh, well, Christianity is true. Is that at all like what you're saying here? Because I feel like that's what you're saying.
No, I'll be honest, it's fairly close, and that's why this is a major preface, because this by itself is not enough evidence to believe at all. But I did say this is for all religions. Like, if you say Joseph Smith actually was interpreting the tablets, like we take him at his word that he was interpreting the tablets. Like, could he have been mistaken? Yes. Could the disciples have been mistaken that that was Jesus? Very unlikely. Yeah, do you see what I'm saying?
How do you know that?
Take Joseph Smith at his word that yes, he's trying to.
How do you know that the apostles were not mistaken? How do you know that the apostles were not mistaken about either who they were talking to or who they were receiving messages from?
You mean like when he's sitting with them after the resurrection and eating with them in the upper room?
Yep, sure.
I mean, honestly, I'm not sure how they could have been mistaken. How could that have been somebody else?
So, look, Gohan, the problem is that, A, we know it's possible that they could have been mistaken. We know that imposters have existed historically. In fact, Nero, the Roman emperor, was impersonated 3 times, all 3 of which he gained the imposter gained significant support. In fact, so much so that at one point, one of the imposters led to war. He convinced people to go to war because they thought that he was the risen Nero. So this clearly happens historically. But more so than that, even if you think it's very unlikely that these people could be convinced that this person was actually Jesus, even if he was an imposter, the point is that the fact that we know that that's possible, that is something that happens historically, makes it far more likely. It means that your priors for that position should be far higher than anything supernatural, because supernatural things, kind of by their very definition, are not things that we have direct evidence of them happening. They're not things that we experience in everyday life. So this is just an argument from priors. The fact that you know impersonation is possible means that your priors for impersonation should be orders of magnitude higher than your priors for Jesus actually being risen.
So I think if we're talking about circular arguments, we found a circular argument there. Sounds like you're saying anything is more possible than a miracle, so therefore reject any possible miracle because it's not possible.
No, it's about priors, right? The point is that you and I maybe you've personally experienced several miracles in your life, but the point is that the kinds of historical occurrences that we're looking at, on the one hand, we can verify tons and tons of impersonations. We know that impersonation does not require anything supernatural. And so these are things that the prior probability of it happening, even if it's quite low, we know that it's at least possible, right? On the other hand, considering that neither you nor I have ever witnessed anybody coming back from the dead, your prior probability of that happening should be as close to 0 as it can get.
Why?
Oh, because the way that you establish priors is based off of, prior knowledge. So, sorry?
I mean, like, if we take my prior probability of me going up onto my roof to fix my shingles, I haven't done that, but maybe after hurricane season, I might be doing that. So, I mean, you can't say it's improbable that would be up on my roof. It's definitely possible, but you can't tell me the probability.
Right. Look. So the way that we analyze evidence and
happened before is not.
If you want to rationally come to conclusions based off of evidence and based off of experiences that you might have had, the way to do so is via something called Bayesian reasoning. And the way that you do Bayesian reasoning is you basically say, okay, what is my prior credence in some view? So if you have some view that if you go fishing, you'll catch a fish. Well, if you've been fishing before, then your prior credence should be fairly high because you know that you can find fish in lakes, for example. But on the other hand, if your hypothesis, if your belief is that you're going to catch, I don't know, a dinosaur when you go fishing, well, your prior credence in that view should be very, very low just because you've never done that before and you know that all the dinosaurs are dead. Now, after you've established your priors, then you can go and examine what the evidence does. And if the evidence strongly favors one hypothesis over another, then that can change your priors to make them posteriors. That can change your credence based off of what the evidence is. So if, for example, you don't think that there are any coelacanths that still exist, you think that they're long extinct, and then somebody goes and finds a coelacanth, well, even if your prior was very, very close to zero, the fact that you can then find one means that your posterior credence just shoots straight up to like 99%. Now, the question is how good is the evidence? Can it shift the priors, the prior of supernatural things happening being so low and the priors of being, natural things happening being, perhaps low, but not very low? Is the evidence so strong to shift that probability distribution to make it so that even though it's much, 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 much less likely without any evidence that Jesus actually rose from the dead compared to Jesus being impersonated, is the evidence from, say, the Bible so strong that it blows the possibility of Jesus being impersonated out of the water? That's how we establish this. And so the question is what is the priors that you come at this with? And I would argue that your prior for Jesus coming back from the dead should be remarkably low, so close to zero that essentially any evidence should make it impossible, or no evidence should make it possible, rather.
So, I mean, I think that's the basis of, to me that, I'm sorry if I sound offensive, but to me that sounds very close-minded when you say the possibility of this happening should be so close to zero that no evidence should change.
No. But Gohan, I'm just kind of curious. What's close-minded about saying, well, the prior likelihood of this event being either Jesus resurrecting from the dead or maybe something along those lines. How is it closed-minded to say, well, if you have strong enough evidence to overcome those prior likelihoods, then you can actually prove that your statement is correct? How is asking for more evidence and solid evidence to support your conclusion? How is that closed-minded?
You're right. If you phrase it like that, it's not. But if you give it such a low probability where you state that no amount of evidence would be changing your mind, like it's not zero, but no amount of evidence would change your mind, I don't understand how that's not.
I don't think that's what Blitz said. Is that what you said, Blitz?
It's perhaps what I said. What I meant, I mean, if I did say that, what I meant to say is that I don't think that any written testimony is going to be sufficient to overcome that. Now, look, if somebody went and they actually found a little, besides Ron Wyatt, if they actually went and found a little blood sample from some tomb in Jerusalem that only had 23 chromosomes or whatever, and then it had one God chromosome, if they actually found that, then sure, that would be really compelling evidence. And even though the supernatural claim has very, very low priors, that would probably shoot your credence in the position very, very high, at least, to 80, 90, whatever percent. But saying that, oh, these people claimed that they met with the guy, when there is an equally good explanation that doesn't require supernatural explanation, it seems like whatever your prior should be, because supernatural things are by definition not common, it seems like that your priors for the supernatural thing should be lower than the prior for the natural thing. And they both equally well explain the evidence. So the prior for the natural thing will go up by the same amount that the prior for the supernatural thing will. So the natural explanation will always be favored. Unless you find supernatural evidence, of course.
So I think, let's rephrase the statement to not like anything won't change my mind, but as you say, like it's so low, but written testimony alone won't change my mind. I'm fine rephrasing it to that. Sorry, could you restate the question? I just want to say that really quick.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that when you have two hypotheses that make the same predictions about about what would happen, and so they're both equally well explained by the data, which the imposter hypothesis and the resurrection hypothesis are both equally well explained by the data that we have, documents of people claiming resurrection and so on, then that means that the credence you have in them, how strongly you believe those explanations, rise by the same amount. So if the natural explanation starts off with more credence, with a higher probability, then even if you have really good evidence that explains or that is predicted by the resurrection hypothesis, well, they're both going to go up by the same amount, unless you find some piece of evidence that can distinguish between the two, like finding Jesus's blood, for example, would be a good way to do that.
Yeah. So I think one problem I have is I don't define miracle the same way you do, as being the least probable or a very rare occurrence. I think a miracle is anytime there's divine intervention, and I think divine intervention actually happens quite a lot. But I'm still having a problem.
Surely natural things are more common than supernatural things.
The probability.
And how would you, well, I'm wondering, how would you be able to discern between some natural phenomena that you don't understand and a God miracle?
I've actually wanted to comment on this pretty much my whole life. This kind of gets into the idea of magic it's impossible to tell magic from any sufficiently highly advanced technology. Is that true? Is that kind of your question?
Well, I mean, I didn't bring up magic, but yeah, I mean, I think that the miracle claims are pretty much, magical claims, but not just sufficiently advanced technology, but just any natural phenomena that we don't understand. Because, like, just to give you a for instance here, we used to think that God was responsible for lightning. The Greeks and the Romans thought that their respective god crafted lightning bolts and threw them, and that got transferred a little bit to God. God throws lightning bolts and shocks people in the Old Testament a lot. But we always thought that lightning was the product of God, but we understand lightning better now. Maybe not completely. I remember seeing a Dr. Blitz stream or a conversation about that recently. But we have a better understanding of lightning, and it's definitely not a God thing, right? So I'm kind of curious what what is your method for discerning between God magically making something happen and then just some phenomena that we just don't understand yet?
I wouldn't say like anything I don't understand is God. That sounds very much like a God of the gaps. A lot of the things that I do understand, I see as pointers to there being a God. So a lot of the reasons I do believe is because of things I've learned to understand. So I wouldn't ever say like, I don't understand this, therefore God.
Right. I wasn't saying that though, Gohan. Let me repeat my question. What is your method for distinguishing between God miracles or magic and just natural phenomena that we don't understand?
Can I change the question? Take off that last ending of
what? No, wait, hold on. Why are you changing my question to you? It's I'm I don't like the question. Can I ask a different question, please? No, I asked you a question. The question is, what is your methodology for discerning between magic and natural phenomena that we don't understand?
Okay. So I would say to me, it doesn't matter if it's phenomenon we do understand or not. I would say how do I determine between miracles and something natural? Is same way I determine if it's a person behind me getting hit by something or not. If I can see that there was intention and low odds of something happening, then most likely somebody tried to make that happen. Same thing for me.
Okay, so
there's intention, low odds of something happening. Like
Gohan, using that right there, you would then have to admit that there are some lightning strikes that are thrown by God. Is that something that you would say is accurate? Like there are some lightning strikes or some weather events that are caused by God?
I wouldn't say yes or no. I mean, I have no idea if God threw lightning. I wouldn't say he can't. I wouldn't say he definitely did. I have no idea.
But look, using your same criteria for determining whether something is supernatural or whether it's perhaps has a natural explanation, you said that if it is super rare and seems directed, I'm paraphrasing, but you could imagine, and I'm sure that this has happened in the past, where somebody, an atheist, got struck by lightning. And that's really rare, and it's perhaps deserved, under your worldview anyway. Would we then be justified in saying that it was God that caused that person to be struck by lightning?
So the kind of rarity I'm talking about is not like something that happens like that, where it's, yes, it's rare that lightning would strike this spot at this time, but I'm talking like orders of magnitude more rare, like 10 to the 120 orders of magnitude.
Oh, do you want to talk about the cosmological constant? Because we can talk about that.
Yeah, stuff like that. I was going more abiogenesis and
well, the 10 to the 120 power thing, that's a cosmological constant thing. I know that number like I was born with it. That's not an abiogenesis thing.
Good. It actually does deal with DNA formation.
Okay. Can you cite the relevant paper so that I can go take a look at it?
I can't. It was in my organic chemistry class. It was a big green textbook. I'm pretty sure the title was organic chemistry. If you give me a second, I can find you the author.
Yeah, sure, please.
All right, one second. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the 10 to the 120th, by the way, that's I know that you're looking, so I'm just talking to the audience at this point. That's a claim about the deviation that the cosmological constant has, the observed cosmological constant that we see in the universe, compared with the theoretical predictions of what the cosmological constant should be. Now, there are some issues with this claim, namely that, so then the argument goes by theists is that, well, you know, if it's off by 120 orders of magnitude, it must have been chosen to be that way. Now, of course, the trouble with this argument is that it relies on the understanding that the theoretical prediction is actually correct and not that it's off by 120 orders of magnitude because the relationship between the thing being calculated and the observed cosmological constant is a true relationship. Of course, it's almost certainly not a true relationship. And even then, that particular number, 10 to the 120th power, that number is, even if you assume that is the correct relationship, kind of like the bare relationship, if you just do a little bit of, thinking about the way that we expect gravity to behave at the microscopic scale, what you find is that actually all goes away. We would actually expect a small cosmological constant. That's putting aside the fact that we now have evidence that there isn't a cosmological constant in our universe at all. So anyway, hopefully it filled enough time for Gohan to go find the author of this textbook.
Go.
Right now, I'm not finding it. Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, I was just gonna say we have been on the call for about 24 minutes, and we do have other callers to get to. So we do need to sort of be wrapping up so that we can get to the other callers in our show's time frame. So I don't know. As far as wrapping up here at the end of the call, I didn't really hear anything that would be compelling that would make me trust like Christianity more. And I don't understand why you trust Christianity other than you just trust Christianity. Do you recognize? Maybe we can end on this particular topic. Do you recognize that your trust of Christianity, your level of trust of Christianity would be similar to those in different religions, that they would trust their religion just as much as you trust your religion? And so it ends up being like just an equal thing. Like, you're adhering to, or you're trusting your religion just as much as a Muslim is trusting Islam, and just as much as a Mormon is trusting Mormonism. Do you recognize that?
So I think this is a really good thing. I appreciate you guys being on the call, taking me on the call. The thing I wanted to get into was this exactly. My original claim is not just my claim on this call wasn't just that we should trust Christianity solely because of it. Even with Muslims cannot claim that the founders of their religion could not have been wrong, died a martyr's death, and those three things I said at first. So they couldn't be wrong. They died a martyr's death. I forget the third one. I don't know if any of y'all remember it. There were three things. Christianity.
Yeah. So there's heartfelt claims. You mentioned eyewitnesses, and then you also mentioned the false dichotomy of they're either lying or they're truthful.
Right. So they couldn't be wrong. They're either lying or telling the truth. They were seeing in groups these occurrences of Jesus after the death and resurrection, and they died for their beliefs. Muslims can claim the third one.
No.
A lot of their people died for their beliefs, but they can't.
No. So you can't actually prove that the apostles died for their beliefs. For one, the martyrdom stories are generally overblown, and there's actually a really great book out there about the myth of persecution. I can't remember the author's name, but the book title is The Myth of Persecution. So you can't actually prove that they were persecuted in that way. The only ones that we can be sure of that were quote unquote martyrs would have been Peter and Paul. And even then, I don't think that you can prove sufficiently that they were given a chance to recant their belief. So, I mean, that's just an ad hoc statement that they were martyred in that way. Anyways, Gohan, this has been a great call. We went through a whole lot of different topics, and I appreciate you calling in. But it was Dr. Candida Moss. That's who it is. The Myth of Persecution. Thank you in the chat there for getting that for me. But Gohan, I gave the last caller the last say, but we're gonna head on out right now, and I hope that you have a great night. Okay, bud.
Yeah, you too. Thank you guys for the call.
All right. Thanks, Gohan. All right. Yes, I learned my lesson for sure.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. So the next person we have is John from California. What's up there, John? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Good.
Pretty good. Doing good. What's your question for us today?
So I'm coming not to ask a question, but to make a claim.
Okay.
I feel like this is the right show to look into this. It's the good part of this claim is you don't have to take my word for anything. You can independently verify this. Even if you don't agree with my interpretation of this, my claim itself, it's a falsifiable claim. So it's either true or it's not. And I'm very confident that it's true.
All right. Shoot.
My claim is that nobody Nobody knows what the Lord's Prayer means.
How does
Lord's
this
Prayer, as it comes down to us in the Gospels, it contains a word in Greek that appears nowhere else, that isn't like a word that we have a definition for. It's like if Jesus coined a phrase specifically, and this whole time for the past 2,000 years, nobody's brought this up. Like I feel like out of anywhere, like you guys would be the ACA would be the perfect people to like jump on this. Nobody knows what the Lord's Prayer means. Like that feels significant to me. I don't know.
Okay, this is not really. I don't know about you, Blitz, but this is not really helping me whatsoever. Hold on, I'm gonna have to mute you, John, if you can't stop talking while I'm talking. I don't know how. Like, what benefit is this? Let's just say nobody understands it. What do you fucking do? What does this mean for anything?
I would like to propose an alternative meaning, which has become the basis of my faith, that to me actually makes Scripture make sense.
So the word epiousion
that I'm making, so that's the second.
What's the translation that you're giving for that word?
Sorry. I don't have it off the top of my head. It's episuloan, I believe.
Epiosion.
The word that's translated as daily bread. Epiosion. Thank you.
So what's your translation for it?
That is a word that appears nowhere else in the Greek language.
Okay, what's your translation for it?
And again, there's two parts of this. There's my free bread for everybody, every day. And that's what Jesus was telling us to do.
Based and everybody gets free food pilled?
Only carbohydrates. That's a very important, because we still need an economy. But only carbohydrates. You get enough carbohydrates to survive.
I think this is a meme.
Yeah, are you a troll?
Oh, it's a real thing.
Free carbs.
This is genuinely real. This is my belief.
Okay, John, let's test this out. John, my John, my pancreas is broke as fuck. Okay, I have to take insulin. I got a pump right here, insulin pump. I've got to take insulin every day. I cannot just eat free carbs or whatever in the fuck that's supposed to mean.
Oh, poor guy.
How does that? Yeah, how does that translate for all of the diabetics that have ever existed? Like as far as these free carbs go from Jesus's supposed flesh.
I'm not going to tell you how your diabetes works, and it's your body, it's your business. I have some diabetics in my family, and while they did have to manage their intake of sugar, they absolutely still eat carbohydrates. There is no way that you can survive.
No. Yes. I still eat carbohydrates. I'm trying to discern what in the fuck you mean by free carbs for everybody. Like that, I just in particular for a diabetic, like I just don't understand what that means. I didn't say that diabetics don't eat carbs. That's not what I said.
He just wants bread lines like in the Soviet Union. Free carbs.
Get your carbs here. Get your carbs.
Like seeds strewn right by the wayside. If the Catholic Church had done this, we wouldn't have had communism. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, but still, I'm trying to figure out.
Response to that would be we would give you a slightly smaller portion.
Why? So hold on. Why do we have this word defined in Greek lexicons? Is it? Are you saying that the only reason why we have this word defined in Greek lexicons is because of Jesus?
Well, it was only used by Jesus. That's what I'm saying. I don't think we really do have a definition. The definition that we've accepted as daily bread, I disagree that that's basically what my claim is, the definition that we've accepted is wrong, or doesn't have any evidence, doesn't have enough evidence to convince me that it's true, at least.
Okay, I don't understand what you're talking about here, because the bread part. No, you're because you're complicating. No, wait, John, you're complicating the Greek here. The actual Greek is ton arton hemon ton apusion. Or I'm sorry, I don't know how you pronounce that exactly in Greek, but so that's the entire phrase, and that's the bread of us daily. So that's what you're calling the daily bread, and so it's actually like an entire phrase here that means the daily bread. So I don't know what you mean by there's a singular word for daily bread. The apusion right there is daily, and then bread is arton as far as the interlinear goes. So which one are you saying is the unique word? Is it the apusion or is it the arton?
Apusion. Yes, it's apusion.
So that means so that means daily. So that means daily. No. So you're saying that daily, the understanding of daily here is unique to the Gospel of Matthew, and I'm not even sure if Luke uses that word, but I would assume Luke uses the same kind of word.
So the trouble is that I'm sure that that other words for the word daily appear elsewhere. It's just that this particular Greek word doesn't appear elsewhere, except in Luke and in the Lord's Prayer, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, like, okay, suppose that's true. Does this mean that there is a God?
I'd have to check.
Does this mean that there's a God?
That in and of itself wouldn't. There's a lot of other evidence that I would have to use to support that one. But this one, what it means is that we've been worshiping God wrong the entire time. We're way off here. However,
we need Soviet bread lines.
In terms of religion,
you heard it here first,
we
folks.
went off base. I think this is where we started. My genuine argument is that communism would have never happened if the Catholic Church had just been doing this the whole time. That would have been. So
my question is, do you have a degree in Greek and Greek and Aramaic linguistics?
Definitely not. I can't even pronounce apusion, whatever it is.
So then why do you think that you know the correct translation and like the ancient Greek scholars, the Aramaic scholars and so on aren't correctly translating it?
That was why at the beginning I wanted to be very clear. There's sort of two parts of this claim. There's the claim that we don't know what it is, which is falsifiable. And then there's my own personal interpretation of it, which we can talk about, but that's a separate claim. The reason I'm making this claim is because other writers can back me up on this. Nobody has ever seen this word before. When we translate it, quote unquote, all we're doing is making a best guess.
So it is true that it's like not we don't have like certainty on this word. To say that nobody knows is probably too strong a statement. It's better to say that we can only infer what it means, but that doesn't mean that like we don't have any knowledge whatsoever about what it could mean. Like it's definitely not going to mean like the Statue of Liberty, right? So all I'm saying is that I don't know. I trust the people who are doing the translation better, and if they have good justifications for translating the way that they are, it seems like that they're probably more justified in that position than you are.
What if they had an economic incentive to hide the truth? And I'm telling you, there's a conspiracy going way back here.
No, yeah, I don't entertain like conspiracy theories like that. Like, oh, there's a big conspiracy to hide it. Like, I still don't understand how this benefits us.
I don't think it's deliberate, but
okay, I still don't understand how any of this gets us anywhere with anything.
The world, if the Catholic Church gave up whatever it was doing and had been doing free beer and free popcorn for everybody the whole time, what if Christopher Columbus had come over and instead of trying to convert people, instead of genociding people, had just like given them free bread? Like, here's bread. Okay. People would have probably converted anyway.
That's cool, but irrelevant.
You can't see.
So you're saying
people are starving. People are starving.
So
hold on. An organization, not a political organization.
No, so John, look, I don't understand how changing. You're basically without any kind of actual expertise here. You're just reassigning this word to mean free. Am I understanding that correctly? I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly.
I don't think I'm coming out of left field, though, because it comes right after give. What does give typically imply?
No, it doesn't come right after give. I mean, it says
what is
it says the bread.
give
It says
typically
ton
imply?
arton hematon.
You have to pay for something somebody gave you.
No, like I still don't understand how this is. Like, all that this would entail is that the communion would be given for free, which is already given for free. I mean, you don't have to pay to take communion, or at least I never did. I mean, you got to donate to the church, but I mean, that's whatever.
We should be doing more communion every day.
Right. Well, okay. Wait.
We're doing more communion
every day.
Even non-believers.
Well, I'm sorry. When was the last time you had communion? Because that shit sucks.
Earlier this morning. I don't know. I like it. I have a good church.
Did you have communion flakes or something like that? Like what? I mean, I guess I just don't understand how this would benefit humanity, giving somebody a little bit of piece of unleavened bread on your tongue there it's like really dry and chalky and everything like that.
And that's what you were asking specifically.
Wait, so John, do you think that bread is God?
Enough bread to sustain a person for a day, and it can be any kind of bread you want. It doesn't even have
John,
to be bread.
Do you think that bread is God?
You like pop? It's whatever you want.
John, do you think that bread is God?
Well, I believe that
seems like
bread
a troll.
is an expression of God. Yes, because Allah is all-encompassing everywhere. No, I don't. No, it's not trolling. That's a belief. Everything's God, kind of. It's also not God, but it is.
Wait. How can it both be not God and God at the exact same time?
I believe that bread is given to us as a blessing by God, though.
Bread is literally not a blessing by God. It's literally a product of like what is it, yeast and water, and then a chemical reaction involving carbon dioxide, I think, right? It's been a while since I've looked up the
Probably, but you are feeding him bread, if you will, but you are feeding the troll.
Yeah.
All right, if you believe
John,
that the laws of faith.
John, I cannot in good faith continue the conversation because I don't think that you're genuine.
I've heard from others that he does this every show.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, John. I'm going to just go ahead and drop you because we're wasting minutes here on our precious minutes on this show. Anyways, okay. So, but I will say that I learned something new out of that call, and that's the uniqueness of that word.
It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, because I looked it up while he was talking about it. I was like, yeah, it's only used in those two places in the Gospels. Maybe one more in another outside work that derives from the Gospels. So it's kind of like a really unique kind of situation there. But I still don't see how changing that one word to whatever he was wanting it to mean would indicate that everybody gets free bread. Also, I can't eat free bread. Like, I could eat a little bit of bread, but that's not enough to sustain me as like a human.
So you're not getting into the kingdom of heaven then? Sorry, the kingdom of leaven.
All right. So anyways, next up is going to be Hannah calling in from Misty Servers. How's it going there, Hannah?
Going good. How about you?
Pretty good. I do want to let you know that we are kind of running short on time here, so we can't get into too deep of a conversation, but I know that you were wanting to try to use quantum mechanics as evidence for God's existence, which I think Blitz is the perfect person to interact with on this. So go ahead, Hannah, make your argument here.
You hate me, don't you, John? All right.
The premise that quantum mechanics is evidence for God's existence, I think I would put it in syllogistic reasoning. So premise one would be the non-deterministic interpretations of quantum mechanics is true. B, non-deterministic interpretations of quantum mechanics are evidence that naturalism is false. And C, that if naturalism is false, God is more likely. So that would probably be the three-part syllogism for why I believe quantum mechanics is evidence for God's existence being more likely.
So, you have I mean, I have a problem with both. Well, I have a problem with all three premises, but we can attack these one at a time. So suppose for a moment that we grant that this is a valid syllogism, which I suppose it is. How do you establish that the non-deterministic interpretations of quantum mechanics are true?
Because it appears with things like the double split experiment and other things, to my understanding, are that basically indeterminacy is almost always found in experiments about the quantum level.
So to be clear, the deterministic interpretations of quantum mechanics, like the many worlds interpretation, would expect the same outcomes of measurement. So for example, you would expect to see, upon measuring, upon placing a detector, say, in front of one of the slits, you would expect to see a particle-like behavior after performing your measurement, even in the deterministic interpretation known as the many worlds interpretation.
Okay. So if that's the case, you would then say that the non-deterministic theory is not proven by the experiments because the deterministic has the same predictive power?
Yes, as far as I'm aware, there is not a single interpretation, with perhaps exception of the Bohmian interpretation, that has been falsified. And even that's a stretch, saying that the Bohmian interpretation has been falsified.
So it's been proven false? The Bohmian
So it depends on who you believe. So some would say that the Bohmian interpretation hasn't been proven false, but perhaps is incompatible with quantum field theory. And we know that quantum field theory is a good description of reality. And so if that's the case, that the Bohmian interpretation is incompatible with that, then you would come to the conclusion that if quantum field theory is true, then the Bohmian interpretation is false. Others have argued that you can make it compatible, but that's not super compelling to a lot of people.
Okay. And so would you say then that premise A, that the non-deterministic theory of quantum mechanics is true, is false?
I would say that it is unjustified. Now, it might be the case that the correct interpretation is, non-deterministic, but we don't have any reason to accept that given the data we have.
Okay. I guess I'd have to look more into it, but the reason I asked is because I thought that the fact that scientists can't find where a particle is on the quantum level when measuring it is generally interpreted as basically proof of the law of causality not holding on the quantum level. But if that's the case, then I would have to look into the more deterministic interpretations. But would you like to go into the second premise?
Yeah, sure.
With the first premise?
Sure, that's fine.
Would you like to just...
No, that's fine. So how do you figure that naturalism requires determinism?
I make the leap to... Well, specifically, the reason I think that I don't think naturalism requires determinism because I believe you can be a naturalist and believe in free will, even libertarian free will. But I do believe naturalism would be incompatible with non-determinism of physical or material objects. And I believe the reason for that is because of the fact that on the quantum level, basically, if there's indeterminacy, this means the law of causality doesn't hold. Whereas I believe if naturalism is true, this means the law of causality would hold, because naturalism, as I understand it, is the belief that everything is bound by the laws of nature, and the laws of nature inherently operate by causality, and matter and physical existence would be mechanistic causality.
Yeah, so naturalism, as far as I understand it, can absolutely, I mean, if you interpret naturalism to be something like everything follows laws of nature, then perhaps that's a fine definition. But there's no reason why you can't have statistical or stochastic laws of nature, where the law of nature is that you have you have some probability of measuring this outcome and some probability of measuring that outcome. I don't see the incompatibility there.
Well, if it's if physical reality or material reality, which is what quantum mechanics studies, not consciousness, and I would say you can definitely believe consciousness is not reducible to physical or material reality, which is why I say naturalism does not require determinism. But at least when we're talking about material or physical reality, if that's not bound by the law of causality, then how could any law of nature apply to it, right? If causality as such does not apply to physical or material reality, then what laws of nature are there?
So I don't think that laws of nature are descriptive of causality. In fact, the way that we typically talk about laws of physics these days is we talk about them in terms of like descriptive behavior or descriptions of what actually happens. So a law of nature might be something like when you have a mass here and you have another mass there, we observe a force occurring, say, for the law of gravitation, if you will. But that's just a descriptive statement. That's not a statement about causality. It's not a statement about this causes that. It's a statement of these things occur simultaneously, for example. And you could just as well have another descriptive statement saying, if you were to measure such and such a thing at such and such a time, if you were to measure this over and over again, half the time you would get this and half the time you would get that. That's an equally good description. It's just not as informative, but it's still a good description.
Okay, so, but then what is the purpose of these descriptive things if it's not demonstrating causal relationships would be my question. Or how exactly are they laws if they're just descriptions? Because to my understanding, a law implies that basically this is a principle that will occur, not just a description of what has already occurred.
Yeah, so typically we take, when we're doing, any sort of scientific investigation, typically we take the universe to have the property of consistency, namely that things that have happened in the past or the way things are in the past will continue to be the way things are in the future. And so if you have some sort of description of the way things happened in the past, then you can at least make some sort of prediction about the way things will likely happen in the future, or perhaps the way that things will definitely happen in the future, depending on what your laws look like. But that doesn't imply any sort of causality. If you're asking what's the point of them, well, the point of them is to be able to describe what will happen in the future based off of what is happening now. But that's not causality. That's just, you have some information now, and so you can use that to figure out what will happen next.
Well, then how do we know that something will happen in the future if we can't demonstrate a causal relationship to lead it to it happening in the future, is my question. Like by what method do we gain knowledge that, say, for example, the idea that the freezing point of water is this, and then in the future, the freezing point of water will still be this, if you can't demonstrate a causal relationship between the temperature and the freezing of the water? If there's no causal relationships, my question would be then, how do we know the future will resemble the past?
Oh, that's an assumption built into the scientific process. It's not something that we can prove. This is the problem of induction, right? But if you're doing science, you just assume that the future will be like the past.
Well, fine, but then if it's not proven, then I'm not saying it's false, but it's not, I would say it's the same thing with God. Like if you don't believe in God because you don't believe there's evidence for him, then I would say, because you'd say it would be unjustified to believe in something for which there's no evidence. If there's no evidence that something will happen in the future that resembles the past, then you're also unjustified in believing that, if that makes sense.
Well, look, I mean, like, it depends on what you take justification to be. You can take seemings as justification. That perhaps is a very weak version of justification, or you could just accept it axiomatically. I mean, look, if you want to reject the principle of induction because you think that it's unjustifiable, that if you're taking like some foundationalist worldview, you could do that. You would just live a pretty miserable and confused life.
Well, then I would say I would accept then what I'm saying is if you can basically say the law of induction, basically the principle of induction is an axiomatic thing, then why can't I say God is an axiom in the same way?
You can, but then that doesn't give anybody else justification to believe in it, right?
Well, then why does anyone have justification in believing in induction as an axiom?
Oh, I mean, so my guess is probably because there's like some evolutionary reason psychologically to be able to infer from the past about the future. And so I would suspect that humans, being, you know, rational beings that are trying to survive, probably have a belief in induction that, you know, if the sun rose yesterday, it'll rise tomorrow, probably have that inbuilt in us. That's probably like a fundamental part of being human. Now, perhaps you could say that that's not rational and that we should try to overcome this instinct that we have, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, you and I both do agree that the future will likely be like the past, right?
Yeah, I mean, something like the sun will rise tomorrow. Yeah, I would say that's an example of a true statement. But
right, but that relies on this intuition that we have.
There are causal patterns, and I believe these Well, yes, but the thing is, the reason I have for the justification for induction is that I believe in God, and I believe God demonstrates induction because if God exists, God can create laws of causality, and if God can create laws of causality, God can create causal relationships which will cause the sun to rise tomorrow. But if there is no God, and then you have basically a lack of causal relationships, then basically I don't know how you would justify induction then, because basically if God exists, he can create these causal relationships, but if God doesn't exist, then you can't be certain of these causal relationships, and therefore induction would be unjustified. So basically what I'm saying is, I understand that it's a psychological thing for induction, but my question to you would be, why does anyone have a good epistemic justification for believing in induction as opposed to God, when neither of them you would believe have proof of them?
Yeah, so I mean, it might be the case that there is no justification for this psychology that we have, or it might be the case that that is a feature of our universe, and that's why we have that psychology. The point is the kind of reasoning that we do, the kind of reasoning that we have just existing as beings, kind of requires induction. Like we're just really not capable of operating without it. It seems like we're totally fine to operate without any sort of beliefs about God. So it doesn't seem like that's like a required way of thinking about the world in order for us to function in the societies that we live in. So I mean, just pragmatically, there's a good justification for believing in induction, and there's not really a good justification for believing in God, at least in the same sense. But this is getting very philosophically hairy. What I would say is that when we do physics, like when we genuinely do physics, when we write down equations, when we analyze data, we're not looking for cause and effect relationships. That hasn't been the case since like Newton's time or something like this. We're looking for descriptive relationships between data points, right? You might call them dependent and independent variables, but really, at the fundamental layer of physics, there's no distinction between dependent and independent variables, right? These are just data points that are correlated, and you can't really tell the difference between which one caused which one, right? Does the mass cause the force, even if they exist simultaneously? Well, it's hard to say.
Okay, so basically you would say then that naturalism is compatible with indeterminacy, because naturalism, or the idea that everything operates according to laws of nature, does not mean causal relationships, just dependent or independent variable relationships?
I would say that naturalism requires a consistent description of correlation, of like physical correlation.
Okay, but basically the point is that naturalism does not require these laws of nature to be causal relationships or causal laws of nature, but just correlated laws of nature.
Yep. Now it's kind of a bare bones naturalism, and okay. You could say that like objects have causal power, and then you can just say, oh well, the causal power is inherent in the objects, and the laws are describing that causal power, but it's not necessary for naturalism.
Okay, and so you would say yes. So you would say you would adhere to to like a conventionalist naturalism, where the laws of nature are conventional correlations without causality, and you do not believe in determinism. Or you would you say you subscribe to determinism?
I'm a determinist, but I take that that's different from taking some view on causality. I'm a determinist in the sense that I think that the future is, in some sense, always predictable given previous data.
And are you a determinist about the physical and material world, or are you also a determinist about free will?
I'm some sort of compatibilist about free will. There's a whole discussion to be had there. But my general view is that I'm a physicalist. So I take that the mind is like a physical thing, or at least arises from physical things. But that's perhaps a conversation for another time. I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah, we are coming up on the end. We still have one more person to get to.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say to that that perhaps I was just confused about what naturalism necessitated, because I thought naturalism was a belief that there were causal laws of nature. But if you can believe in naturalism without believing causal laws of nature, then yeah, I just must have had a misunderstanding, and then the argument for quantum indeterminacy would not be evidence for non-naturalism, and therefore not evidence for God. So if that's the case, then yeah, I guess there was just confusion on my part.
So I think it's Hume that talks about the indeterminacy of causalism, or of a cause and effect relationship. So that's sort of where this idea is stemming from. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right, Hannah,
Okay.
did you get all of your questions
yeah,
answered for this?
Yeah, it was good talking to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, well, mostly Blitz. That's his area of expertise right here, or at least more so than mine. But I appreciate you calling in there, Hannah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, see you later.
Sorry about that. I know it's easy to get bogged down in philosophy lingo.
No. Yeah, you're perfectly fine. Hannah calls in all the time, so I'm glad that you were able to really interact on a level, that particular level, with them, because they call in all the time and they want to get super specific about a lot of things. So I'm glad that they were able to do that with you.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Georgie from Bulgaria.
Oh,
What's
I spoke
up there,
with Georgie
Georgie?
the other day.
Yeah. How you doing, Georgie?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm doing very well.
Good. So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, maybe you can give me a minute and a half and I can make a thesis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Lay down whatever you want to.
Well, we, as eternal, infinite awareness, from a higher perspective, want to experience anything like meaningful. And this is why we have created physical reality, because it provides an opportunity to do just that. And I would say that existence is not subject to time. Time is a concept within existence. Okay, we can converse now.
So what does this have to do with God?
Well, there are 2 or 3 main aspects of God, but God in his essence is pure existence, and he cannot become non-existence by definition. Yeah.
Yes. God is pure existence. The universe is pure existence. Therefore, the universe is God. Something like this.
God has the quality to exist, and we are the first step down from God. The one
Georgie?
God does not have awareness.
Georgie, can you please enlighten us as to how you know that God is defined that way, or that God has that attribute? How do you know that, other than just ad hoc saying that he is? How can you prove that?
By definition, it's something like metaphysics. By definition, the one God is alone, so he doesn't have awareness.
Okay, that I don't see how. I don't understand how that proves that God has the quality to exist. You're just saying that you're defining God that way, and that's it. Like, you're not actually substantiating why you would define him that way. We've got a lot of dead air here. I'm not sure what's going on with Georgie's connection. Oh shit, we've got awareness. Did you know that, Blitz? We have awareness. Therefore, God.
I didn't know that. Therefore, I don't have awareness. Therefore, there is no God.
Well, fuck. We just disproved Georgie's God there. So, Georgie, can you please substantiate for us that God, like, the reason for this definition? Or do you have something else you want to ask, Blitz?
I was just going to say, I had this exact conversation with him on Monday or something.
Okay.
And it basically went nowhere for 20 minutes. So if there's another caller, I might suggest we move on.
Georgie is our last caller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we can have this conversation for 20 minutes.
I'm not really interested in having the conversation for 20 minutes. I still would like Georgie to at least, like, your starting out thing is defining God as having the quality to exist or something like that. Can you substantiate that? I'm just going to ask this one last time. Can you substantiate that definition of God? Like, what seems to indicate that God has that quality, or are you just ad hoc stating it as like a metaphysical necessity?
It's a hard question. You want me to prove it or give proof or something?
Other than just defining God that way, I don't know why you would say that God has the quality of existence or given the ability to exist. Like, I don't understand what grounds that, like, in that makes it so that God has that quality. I'm just wanting you to connect the dots for me on this, because other than just you ad hoc stating it, I don't see a reason for saying God has the quality to exist.
Well, we have non-existence, which doesn't exist and cannot be. So existence cannot become non-existence because of quality, of properties.
Was he this incoherent the other day there, Blitz?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, Georgie. I'm not sure how we can continue forward in this. The screener note says that you're claiming that reality is our simulation. I don't know what that means. You mean like a computer simulation?
We are infinite and eternal awareness, and we're the structure of existence. We are what makes up the one God. So, but we have awareness.
I think I remember interacting with Georgie before, and I believe I did this last time too. Yeah. And I'm wondering, Georgie, can you please parse this for me? Tell me if you understand this particular thing. Mythological truth is the ground of subtle phenomena. Does that make sense to you? I'm going to say no. Okay, Georgie, I'm so sorry. We can't have dead air like this. This is making conversation. And I guess I was just, I guess trolling at that point with the wisdom of Peterson generator. Georgie, maybe call in when you have a better connection next time so that there's not such a long delay.
I don't know if that was a connection issue.
I'm trying to be charitable. All right, sorry, Georgie. I'm just gonna have to go ahead and drop you because you're not interacting really. Anyways, that's gonna be it for the show tonight. Yeah, with Georgie's last call, I was trying to see. I remember the last time Georgie called in that I interacted with him. I just started reading off Wisdom of Peterson, and it blew his mind. And that was a pretty big indicator there of Georgie just being sort of a Jordan Peterson word salad kind of thing. Anyways, Blitz, thank you so much for coming on tonight and interacting with these callers. And I'm sorry we couldn't get more more calls in the theology aspect of things, I guess, and just the one troll. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a delight. Still warm and uncomfortable, though.
Yeah, still warm and uncomfortable. All right, so I guess that's going to be it for our show tonight. It's been a while since I've actually ran a show, so I'm not sure how we close this out. But I hope that everybody has an awesome weekend.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to stop questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your life.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.